Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, stormy ocean, its depths infinite and unknowable. The wind carries the cries of forgotten shipwrecks and the whisper of lost souls. You sense currents beneath the surface, dangerous yet mesmerizing. Now imagine that this ocean isn't out there, but inside your mind. Each wave is a torrent of thoughts, insights, and emotions crashing relentlessly against the fragile shores of your consciousness. You see too much. You feel too deeply. You understand too profoundly. This is the paradox of the intuitive introvert, a soul burdened with the curse of seeing too much. To the outside world, such a person might seem distant, even aloof, sometimes misunderstood as cold or detached. But beneath that quiet exterior lies a mind ablaze with complexity, perpetually perceiving hidden patterns, submerged meanings, and emotional undercurrents others miss. It is as if their consciousness is a lighthouse, casting beams not just upon the surface, but into the abyssal trenches of human existence. Carl Jung, the master of the psyche's hidden depths, touched upon this phenomenon with uncanny precision. He described intuitive introverts as those who perceive the world primarily through their unconscious insights, drawing from a wellspring of symbolic knowledge and deep emotional resonance. But Jung also recognized a darker side, a psychological weight that comes from seeing too much, knowing too much, and yet often feeling profoundly isolated. The intuitive introvert becomes a solitary navigator of shadows, a bearer of truths that the rest of the world prefers not to see. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Jung's words resonate here like a warning and an invitation. To look inside, to truly awaken, is both a gift and a curse. The intuitive introvert is awake in a world of sleepers, bearing visions that both illuminate and isolate. This curse manifests as an unsettling paradox. On one hand, the intuitive introvert's insight is their strength, a beacon that can illuminate complex human motives, societal undercurrents, and existential truths. On the other hand, this insight exacts a toll. The very clarity that allows them to see beyond surface appearances often leads to profound loneliness. They perceive contradictions, hypocrisies, and the fragile facades of meaning that others cling to for comfort. This perceptual overload becomes a source of existential angst. Nietzsche once mused, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." For the intuitive introvert, this abyss is not just metaphorical. It is a lived reality. Their mind peers into the depths of human suffering, chaos, and meaninglessness, risking the darkness seeping back into their own soul. Consider the daily experience of the intuitive introvert. While others navigate life with routine ease, processing stimuli on a more superficial level, this person perceives layers upon layers of information simultaneously. They read between the lines of conversation, intuitively sense others' unspoken emotions, and connect dots in ways invisible to most. This heightened perception becomes both a gift and a curse. It can lead to brilliance in creative, intellectual, or empathic pursuits, but it also fosters a sense of alienation. This alienation is not merely social, it is ontological. The intuitive introvert feels out of step not just with others, but with existence itself. They grapple with questions of purpose, meaning, and selfhood more intensely than most. Their inner world becomes a labyrinth where certainty is elusive, and shadows lurk in every corner. The curse deepens when the intuitive introvert attempts to communicate these insights. Language, tethered to the concrete and literal, often fails to capture the nuance of their inner visions. Misunderstood or dismissed, they retreat further into solitude. This withdrawal is protective yet isolating, an existential spiral into a world that few can penetrate. In this psychological crucible, the intuitive introvert wrestles with an urgent question. How does one live authentically with the weight of seeing too much? How can the soul endure the simultaneous blessing and burden of profound insight without fracturing? The journey through this paradox is fraught but necessary. Jung's psychology offers a path, not of denial but of integration. The intuitive introvert must learn to embrace their visions without being consumed by them, to find communion in solitude, and to navigate the abyss with courage. But this is easier said than done. The curse lingers, a spectral shadow, reminding the intuitive introvert that to see too deeply is to walk a lonely path. Yet, in that loneliness, there lies a profound potential for transformation, for wisdom, and ultimately, for a truer connection with self and world. As we move deeper into this exploration, we will unravel the psychological mechanisms behind this curse, the cultural and existential implications, and the ways intuitive introverts might transcend their isolation. The ocean of the mind is vast, but with courage, one can learn not only to survive its storms, but to navigate toward new horizons of meaning. To understand the curse of seeing too much as an intuitive introvert, we must first dissect what it means to be both intuitive and introverted, and how this dual nature weaves a complex psychological tapestry. Introversion, as Carl Jung originally described, is not mere shyness or social withdrawal. It is a fundamental orientation of the psyche, a preference for turning inward, toward the subjective world of thoughts, feelings, and reflections. The introvert gains energy from solitude and introspection, rather than from external stimuli. This inward focus creates a rich internal life, but it also isolates, because the outer world often feels overwhelming or alien. Now add intuition to the mix. Jung identified intuition as one of the 4 primary psychological functions, alongside sensation, thinking, and feeling. Intuition is perception through the unconscious, a way of knowing that bypasses immediate sensory input and conscious reasoning. It is the faculty that detects possibilities, patterns, and meanings beneath the surface. It is the 6th sense of the psyche, connecting with symbols, archetypes, and the collective unconscious. For the intuitive introvert, the inner world is not only rich but profoundly intricate. Their mind is a labyrinth of symbols, emotions, and potentialities, constantly shifting and revealing new insights. The world outside is filtered through this lens of depth, making everyday experiences a source of continual analysis and synthesis. But therein lies the double-edged sword. This depth of perception can overwhelm the intuitive introvert. Where others see a simple gesture or hear a straightforward statement, the intuitive introvert detects layers of meaning, unspoken intentions, and hidden emotional undercurrents. The world becomes a kaleidoscope of complex signals, each demanding attention and interpretation. This heightened perception can lead to what is sometimes called intuitive overload, a state where the sheer volume of unconscious material flooding consciousness becomes exhausting, even debilitating. The intuitive introvert is bombarded not only by external stimuli, but by a torrent of internal impressions, symbols, and emotions that rarely have clear resolution. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer's bleak yet insightful observation captures this condition. A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants. The intuitive introvert does not simply choose to be burdened by perception. They are compelled by their very nature to absorb, to interpret, and to feel. Their desires, fears, and insights are shaped by forces both conscious and unconscious, pulling them into depths where ordinary willpower often falters. This compulsion to see beyond the surface brings with it an existential responsibility, a demand to make sense of complexity that others might prefer to ignore. The intuitive introvert often becomes a reluctant witness to human contradictions. The mask of civility hiding primal fears, the noble ideals shadowed by selfish impulses, the light of hope flickering amid despair. This relentless witnessing can erode optimism, feeding a growing cynicism or despair. Yet, it is also this very capacity for deep insight that allows intuitive introverts to experience profound moments of connection with the world's mysteries. The paradox is stark. To see too much is to feel both the unbearable weight of reality's contradictions and the sublime beauty of hidden truths. This is the crucible in which the intuitive introvert psyche is forged. Jung understood this tension intimately. He argued that the psyche is a self-regulating system striving for balance, and that the intuitive introvert's challenge is to integrate these overwhelming insights into a cohesive self. Without this integration, the flood of unconscious content can fragment the psyche, leading to anxiety, depression, or dissociation. The intuitive introvert's relationship with others also reflects this dynamic. Their insights can be a source of wisdom and empathy, Yet their tendency to withdraw and reflect can be misunderstood as coldness or aloofness. They may find it difficult to articulate their inner experiences because words often fail to capture the subtlety of intuition. This communicative gap widens the chasm between self and other, intensifying feelings of isolation. Viktor Frankl's profound statement offers a glimmer of hope amidst this solitude. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. The intuitive introvert's curse can become a catalyst for transformation. Through conscious effort, they may learn to channel their perception into creative expression, spiritual practice, or therapeutic dialogue, thereby transcending isolation. But this transformation requires courage and discipline. It demands confronting the shadows within, the fears, doubts, and despair that intuitive insight often unveils. It demands embracing paradox without losing oneself in nihilism or escapism. Above all, it requires patience with the slow, painful process of psychological integration. The curse of seeing too much is, in essence, a call to awaken from unconsciousness, not only to witness the abyss but to become a bridge between hidden depths and conscious life. It is a journey from alienation toward wholeness, from fragmentation toward meaning. As we continue, we will explore how culture and society shape the experience of intuitive introverts, often compounding their sense of otherness. We will examine how modern life, with its demand for speed and superficiality, clashes violently with the slow, deep rhythm of intuitive introversion. And we will confront the question: how can those burdened with this curse reclaim their power and find belonging in a world that prizes distraction over depth? In a world hurtling toward constant connectivity and rapid-fire information, the intuitive introvert stands as a quiet anomaly, a solitary island amid the rushing seas of social noise. While society celebrates extroversion, quick decisions, and surface-level charisma, the intuitive introvert's slow, deep inner processing often goes unseen or worse, misunderstood and dismissed. This cultural blindness to depth compounds their psychological isolation, intensifying the curse of seeing too much. Modern society prizes action and visibility. We live in an age where productivity is measured by output and where social engagement is equated with success. The intuitive introvert, with their natural inclination toward reflection, observation, and inward focus, often finds themselves out of sync with these dominant values. Their need for solitude and mental space is frequently mistaken for disengagement, lack of ambition, or even social deficiency. The pressure to conform to this external rhythm creates a subtle yet profound tension. Intuitive introverts may feel compelled to mask their deeper nature, dimming their insights, suppressing their inner world, to fit into roles that reward superficiality. This adaptation, while sometimes necessary, exacts a psychic price. It can fracture their sense of authenticity and deepen the feeling of alienation. Jean-Paul Sartre's existential insight pierces this cultural dilemma. Hell is other people. For the intuitive introvert, the hell often lies in the relentless demands of social interaction that feels draining, superficial, or even hostile to their inner life. Not because they disdain others, but because the external world demands a mode of engagement antithetical to their nature. The intuitive introvert's heightened sensitivity makes them acutely aware of social facades and unspoken tensions, elements others might overlook or ignore. This awareness creates a paradoxical solitude in crowds. They may be physically present, yet mentally distant, observing patterns of behavior, detecting underlying motives, and intuiting emotions invisible to most. Their inner landscape becomes a refuge but also a prison, as the gulf between themselves and the external world widens. Culturally, this isolation is often reinforced by the stigma attached to introversion and deep intuition. In workplaces, schools, and social settings, the loudest voices command attention. The intuitive introvert's quieter, nuanced contributions may be overshadowed or undervalued. This can lead to self-doubt, internalized shame, or the temptation to withdraw completely. Aldous Huxley, who himself grappled with the challenges of heightened perception, once observed, "Experience is not what happens to you. It is what you do with what happens to you." For the intuitive introvert, experience is overwhelmingly rich, sometimes to the point of saturation. The challenge is to find ways to process and express these experiences meaningfully in a culture that often prefers simplicity over complexity. The consequence of this cultural mismatch is profound psychological suffering. Feelings of invisibility, alienation, and misunderstanding can deepen into existential loneliness. The intuitive introvert may question their own sanity or value, wondering if their perceptions are illusions or burdensome quirks. This alienation also creates barriers to intimacy. Genuine connection requires vulnerability and shared understanding, both of which are complicated when one's inner world is so richly complex and often inaccessible to others. The intuitive introvert's reticence to share too much, out of fear of being misunderstood, paradoxically reinforces their isolation. Yet, this isolation is not simply a personal failing or social quirk. It is a symptom of a larger cultural blindness to depth, nuance, and the shadows of the human psyche. The curse of seeing too much is, in part, a reflection of society's refusal to engage meaningfully with the complexity of existence. By valuing speed, surface, and noise over depth, the world marginalizes those who navigate its unseen layers. This cultural context helps explain why intuitive introverts often feel like exiles, not only from social circles but from the very currents of their time. They carry the weight of insight in a world that prefers distraction, and they bear witness to realities others would rather avoid. But in this exile lies a hidden power. The intuitive introvert's ability to perceive beyond the obvious positions them uniquely as a potential guide through the cultural and existential crises of our era. Their vision is crucial for understanding the fractures in society, the unspoken fears, and the unconscious drives that shape human behavior. To claim this power, however, requires reclaiming the self from alienation and cultivating a community that honors depth. It involves learning how to communicate intuition's subtle language in ways that others can grasp. And it calls for a cultural shift, a collective awakening to the value of introspection, solitude, and psychological complexity. This is no small task. The intuitive introvert's path is a lonely one, fraught with the challenge of bridging inner worlds and outer realities. Yet, it is a path that promises profound transformation, not only for the individual but for the culture itself. As we move forward, we will delve into the existential dimensions of this curse, exploring how seeing too much intersects with questions of meaning, despair, and spiritual longing. We will confront how intuitive introverts wrestle with the void that often opens beneath their insights, and how they might find light amid the darkness. Beneath the intuitive introvert's relentless perception lies a deeper, often unspoken struggle, the existential weight of meaning. To see too much is not just to observe patterns and emotions, it is to confront the very nature of existence, with all its ambiguity, suffering, and silence. This confrontation can provoke an abyssal sense of meaninglessness, a chasm into which the soul sometimes threatens to fall. When the intuitive introvert peers beneath the surface, they often encounter a paradox that has haunted thinkers and mystics alike. The world is simultaneously rich with possibility and shrouded in uncertainty. The search for meaning, a universal human endeavor, becomes particularly acute and painful for those who intuitively perceive the layers of contradiction and impermanence beneath life's veneer. This existential crisis is not a mere intellectual exercise. It is an emotional and spiritual ordeal. The intuitive introvert senses the fragility of identity, the impermanence of values, and the shadow of death that lurks behind every moment of consciousness. Such insights can lead to a profound sense of alienation from the self, from others, and from the cosmos. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche encapsulated this dilemma with brutal clarity. To live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. For the intuitive introvert, the burden of perceiving suffering, in themselves, in others, in the collective, can feel overwhelming. Yet, survival demands the discovery or creation of meaning, a task that often falls squarely on their shoulders. This quest for meaning becomes a double-edged sword. On one side, it can lead to despair, what existentialists call the void, or nothingness, that threatens to engulf us when traditional beliefs and comforts dissolve. On the other side, it can become a powerful source of creativity, insight, and transcendence. The intuitive introvert's challenge is to navigate this tension without succumbing to nihilism or escapism. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust and founder of logotherapy, offered a crucial insight. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. For those burdened with seeing too much, finding or creating meaning becomes not a luxury but a necessity. Their suffering demands a response that transcends mere endurance. But this response is rarely straightforward. The intuitive introvert often wrestles with contradictory impulses: the desire to retreat into solitude and the need to connect meaningfully with others, the urge to surrender to despair and the call to act despite it, the tension between cynicism born of insight and hope born of faith in the unknown. This inner wrestling is the essence of existential freedom, the freedom to choose one's attitude and response to life's inherent uncertainties. It is a burden and a liberation, a source of suffering and potential salvation. The intuitive introvert's heightened sensitivity makes them particularly vulnerable to what existential philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre termed existential nausea, the unsettling awareness of the absurdity and contingency of existence. But it also equips them with the capacity to transform this nausea into creative engagement, to channel their perceptions into art, philosophy, or compassionate action. Yet, this transformation requires what Jung called individuation, the process of integrating unconscious material into conscious awareness, thereby achieving wholeness. Individuation is a difficult, often lonely path, but it is the antidote to fragmentation and despair. Through individuation, the intuitive introvert can learn to hold the paradox of meaning and meaninglessness simultaneously, finding in this tension a dynamic ground for growth. They can discover a deeper sense of self that is not shattered by the abyss but strengthened by it. This process often involves spiritual or mystical experiences, moments when the intuitive introvert senses a unity beyond duality, a connection to something larger than the self. These glimpses offer relief and insight, reminding them that seeing too much can also mean glimpsing the transcendent. But such moments are fleeting, and the everyday reality remains challenging. The curse of seeing too much in this light is a spiritual crucible, a testing ground for courage, faith, and authenticity. As Nietzsche warned, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." For the intuitive introvert, finding that why becomes the cornerstone of enduring their unique burden. It is the lifeline that transforms curse into calling. In the next section, we will explore practical and psychological strategies intuitive introverts can employ to navigate this abyss, to cultivate resilience, balance, and self-compassion amid the intensity of their inner world. We will also consider how their unique vision can become a source of healing, not only for themselves but for the wider world. The intuitive introvert's mind is a tempest, swirling with insights, emotions, and symbols that often refuse to settle. The curse of seeing too much can feel like a relentless storm battering the psyche, threatening to erode the fragile shores of stability. Yet, within this chaos lies the possibility of resilience and balance, a way to harness the intensity without being overwhelmed. Resilience for the intuitive introvert is not about brute force or suppression of their inner experience. It is about cultivating a deep relationship with the self, learning to sit with complexity rather than flee from it. This requires practices that honor the unique rhythms of their psyche, allowing space for reflection, creative expression, and mindful presence. Jung emphasized the importance of engaging with the unconscious through symbols and creativity. Artistic activities, writing, painting, music, become not just hobbies but lifelines. They provide a language for the ineffable, a bridge between the unconscious depths and conscious expression. Through creative work, the intuitive introvert can externalize the inner storm, transforming chaos into order, confusion into clarity. Another crucial practice is establishing boundaries. The intuitive introvert's sensitivity can make them prone to emotional exhaustion, especially when interacting with overstimulating environments or draining social dynamics. Learning to say no, to protect solitude, and to prioritize self-care is essential. This isn't selfishness. It's a necessary act of preservation for a psyche that processes the world so intensely. Meditation and mindfulness offer powerful tools as well. They cultivate the ability to observe thoughts and feelings without becoming lost in them. This capacity for witnessing creates a buffer between perception and reaction, allowing the intuitive introvert to navigate their internal landscape with greater equanimity. As Aldous Huxley remarked, experience is not what happens to you. It is what you do with what happens to you. Mindfulness helps reframe experience, shifting from being overwhelmed by insight to engaging with it creatively. Social connection, paradoxically, is both a challenge and a remedy. Although intuitive introverts often retreat from social life, meaningful relationships can anchor them. Authentic dialogue with trusted others provides validation and reduces the loneliness that so often accompanies deep perception. Yet, these relationships must honor the intuitive introvert's need for space and depth, avoiding superficiality. Therapy or spiritual mentorship can be invaluable as well. Working with someone who understands the nuances of intuition and introversion helps translate inner experiences into language and strategies for growth. Such support can prevent fragmentation and foster individuation, the integration of unconscious material Jung deemed essential for psychic wholeness. Crucially, intuitive introverts must cultivate self-compassion. Their curse often comes with self-criticism, the belief that their sensitivity is a weakness or burden. Yet, as Viktor Frankl said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Embracing one's nature, rather than resisting it, opens the door to healing and empowerment. The intuitive introvert's challenge is to learn how to contain their vast inner world, to become both observer and participant in their own psyche. This balance transforms the curse into a source of wisdom, creativity, and deep connection with existence. Beyond the personal, the intuitive introvert's gifts hold potential for societal healing. Their capacity to perceive hidden truths and emotional undercurrents equips them to serve as empathic leaders, counselors, artists, or visionaries. By embracing their nature, they can help bridge the gaps between fractured selves, communities, and cultures. But this requires a cultural shift as well. A movement away from valuing only the loud, fast, and visible toward honoring depth, reflection, and subtlety. The intuitive introvert's burden is also a collective challenge, to create space for the inner worlds that sustain human meaning. In the final section, we will explore the transformative potential of the intuitive introvert's curse. We will consider how, through courage and integration, seeing too much can become a profound gift, a source of insight and healing that transcends isolation and touches the very heart of what it means to be human. There is a profound alchemy at the heart of the intuitive introvert's journey, a transformation that turns the seemingly unbearable burden of seeing too much into a luminous gift. This transformation is not about erasing the curse, but about embracing it fully, integrating the vastness of inner experience into a coherent, meaningful life. It is a metamorphosis that echoes through psychology, philosophy, and spiritual tradition alike. The crucible of suffering yields the jewel of wisdom. Carl Jung's insight captures this beautifully. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. For the intuitive introvert, the darkness is the flood of unconscious material, the weight of existential questions, the painful awareness of life's contradictions. To bring this darkness into consciousness is to reclaim it, to transform despair into insight, isolation into connection. This transformation is a form of individuation, a journey toward wholeness where the intuitive introvert no longer suffers under the weight of their perception, but uses it to illuminate their path. The process involves integrating shadow aspects, those parts of self that are feared, denied, or rejected, into the conscious personality. By embracing the full spectrum of their inner world, intuitive introverts can access a deeper, more authentic self. The philosopher Aldous Huxley described this process as moving beyond the reductions of ordinary perception to a more profound awareness. The task of the enlightened person is to hold a unity of opposites, to dwell simultaneously in light and shadow. This is the existential paradox that intuitive introverts live daily, a simultaneous encounter with the beauty and the terror of existence. In embracing this paradox, the intuitive introvert becomes a bridge, a conduit between the depths of the unconscious and the surface of conscious life. Their insights can heal not only personal wounds but also collective fractures. By revealing hidden patterns and unspoken truths, they invite others into a fuller awareness of themselves and the world. Viktor Frankl's wisdom resonates here. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. The intuitive introvert's power lies in that space. The ability to witness the depths without being swallowed, to choose meaning despite suffering. This gift is not without responsibility. With deep perception comes the imperative to act wisely and compassionately. The intuitive introvert must cultivate discernment, knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to engage and when to withdraw. Their role is often that of a healer, a visionary, or a guardian of hidden truths. Yet, this path is not solitary. Although the intuitive introvert's inner world is vast and complex, true integration often occurs in relationship, with mentors, peers, or communities that honor depth and authenticity. Creating or finding such spaces is crucial for sustaining this transformative journey. Ultimately, the curse of seeing too much can become a calling. A call to witness the hidden realms of the psyche, to navigate the labyrinth of meaning, and to bring forth light from darkness. It is a call to embody the full complexity of human experience, not as a burden to bear alone, but as a shared human legacy. In closing, consider Nietzsche's final words as a beacon for the intuitive introvert's path. He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. The challenge is to gaze deeply, yet not be consumed, to carry the weight of vision with courage and grace. In doing so, the intuitive introvert not only transforms their own suffering but also enriches the world with insight, empathy, and profound understanding. Their curse is the seed of a unique and indispensable wisdom, one that the world desperately needs.